Alrighty, welcome to the Beyond Coaching Podcast. I'm here with Max Aita, founder of Coach Logic and one of the top weightlifting coaches in the game. We're joined here by Rob Ronan of Austin Barbell. Rob, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So let's just dive straight in. Tell me a little bit about how you got into coaching weightlifting and where Austin Barbell came about.
Yeah. So I think like a lot of individuals getting into coaching really stemmed from an injury. So I had my shoulder rebuilt about 10 years ago. And the outcome of that was I started working with more athletes than working with myself. And the shoulder never recovered. I'm older. It takes a lot to come back from a surgery like that. And I found that, working with athletes during that time was just as fulfilling as, being an athlete.
Nice. Definitely. Yeah, I think I know, Max, you've experienced injury that took you out of the game, that got you into more of the coaching game. I mean, and I did something similar with, I pretty much had a knee replacement at 20 years old. So I can completely resonate.
Yeah, it's that's a pretty standard pathway. I feel like a lot of athletes get into it. Like they don't know when the athletic career is going to end. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you got an injury. So you're not done yet. You don't feel like you're done with it. So what's the next logical step is like become a coach, right?
Yep.
It definitely felt so. I mean, at some point within weightlifting, I think most weightlifters feel this, their whole identity is wrapped around the sport, and I wasn't ready to leave. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you like struggle at all after that? Like, did you get the shoulder injury and then you're like tried to come back and you couldn't, or you just felt like there's a moment you knew like, hey, I got to move on to this next thing?
I mean, to quote the doctor, he's like, we're just going to go in, we're going to check it out, and we'll do whatever we need to do. And it was basically a massive bone spur, which was just grinding away the inside of my labrum. And, it was nearly a complete rebuild. So I got a couple bolts, got some new,
Nice.
So I know Austin Barbell, you have 2 locations. Take me through the journey. I mean, so you've been in business for 10 years. What does that look like?
So we started in the corner. Well, again, I think just like a lot of individuals, we started like in my garage or whatnot. After that, we ended up in the corner of a CrossFit gym, being those strange kids in the corner that everybody looks at, like, what are they doing? That was like a great place to be because there was a lot of athletes coming in and we got some pretty good exposure and we saw, sort of a diverse, like, population of athletes. And at the same time, I was learning how to coach. I was getting better at what I was, what I think I was meant to do. And then, from there, the CrossFit gym, unfortunately, like it didn't work out financially for them. So we had to find a different spot. If y'all are familiar with Yeti, we basically rented out a portion of their old warehouse that was also shared with a soccer facility. That was, again, a great place to be. Tons of kids, great location, super cheap. Utilities were taken care of because it was co-located. During the pandemic, a lot of their business was based on like after school programs. So they had to shut down during that time and we effectively left, which we basically decided it's time to get our own space. We sort of outgrew it anyways. And that space was pretty far outside of Austin. So when we decided to basically find our own brick and mortar, we wanted to be central into the city. And that's where we're at right now with our first location. We just call this the SoCo location or the South Austin location. We were in this location for about 3 or 4 years. And then we decided, our athletes are driving from North Austin to South Austin. It's probably like the Bay Area in terms of traffic. I mean, half the people here are from the Bay Area anyways, but it's getting from like North Austin to South Austin, which is like a 16-mile trip, takes 40 to, 60 minutes to get here. So we decided second location makes perfect sense. Has it worked out exactly the way that we thought it was? Maybe not. I mean, I think things are going great right now, but it's definitely challenging running 2 locations versus just one.
What's been the biggest pain point with running 2 versus 1?
So I can say with 2 locations, we were hoping to sort of build on the cadence or the reputation of the first location. When you open a second location, what ends up happening is like any issues you have in your business, like are immediately exposed. Like you see them like day one, like, oh, we don't have a system to track athletes. We don't know where athletes are going. We really wanted to allow our athletes to choose which location they wanted to go to. So if someone was south, they can train south. If the next day they're north, they can go north. That became an issue with like capacity planning. Weightlifting is all about, at least like monetizing weightlifting, trying to have a business around it and build a system around it is all about density and having the space for your athletes. Each athlete needs 8 by 8 roughly. Maybe you can put 2 athletes if they're sharing a bar. But at the end of the day, like square footage is a premium, and it's hard to manage that when you have 2 locations.
When you split the location, or when you double the location, did you find that like the quality of, because a lot of it's going to be people show up with a coach. I feel like a lot of weightlifting gyms are really just extensions of basically like personal training studios where it's a coach that has a system and a training, and like they're known and people show up to train with that person. They can't escape that being the icon as a coach. So when you had a second location, like how did that impact how you did coaching, like what you had to do? Did you find that people were, they would show up to wherever you were and not the other location, or
Yeah, so we did find that over time, athletes would sort of migrate or follow, specific coaches that we had on staff, either myself or others. And I think that's to be, I'll get into this a little bit further, but we've changed the way that we roster athletes together and we create teams for them. But that was a big problem for us because we would have coaches float between different locations and those athletes would essentially float with them. So you'd have one gym with, 10 athletes and the other gym has 30, and that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know coach development has been one of your biggest pain points in the past. And it sounds like you've created a really good system to do that now. Tell me more about that. Cause I think that's a problem that a lot of business weightlifting, gym or just gym owners in general deal with. And even as a powerlifting gym owner, I deal with the same thing. Coach development is everything because the coach really makes the brand and the business. So what have you done to build all that out?
So for us, I mean, we've gone through, I don't want to say gone through because it makes it seem like we're just churning out coaches and we're definitely not. But we've definitely come to a realization point that if we want full-time results, we need full-time coaches. We can't have part-time coaches coaching athletes on a regular basis. Those coaches aren't invested or they don't own, their training. So we decided each location is going to have a full-time senior coach that's responsible for those athletes. Those athletes are effectively on their club roster. And then we have teams that go against or that stripe across, both gyms. We have a youth team, a national team, regional, state, so forth. So the way that we've been developing coaches, most of my coaches have been hired as athletes. So they're already familiar with the inner workings of the system. I think for most individuals, that's probably the path if they're going to go into a professional coaching career, is they start off with an athlete in a gym and then they move forward. Beyond that, I think it's also very important to like document and actually like take your system, take it out of your head and then put it onto paper. And without that, you're never going to have the ability to essentially talk to your coaches and be like, this is what we've done. It's documented, it's black and white, it's mathematically solid, it has proven results. It takes the dogmatic approach out of it. And within weightlifting, there's a ton of that dogmatic, like this worked for these 3 athletes, so I'm going to do the same thing. So how do we make it repeatable? We found that when we hired coaches that were outside, they would come in with, they have their opinions. It's very religious, right? So, these athletes need more volume or they need this. And it's like, they're just, I feel it in the air. And we wanted to get away from that. So we go through, we basically systematized everything within our business, and effectively the business is part of that system. So in order to have this, like you have to have revenue, you got to have clean equipment, you got to have facility space, all the things play into that broader system.
What is what's like the average age of a coach that's working for you?
My senior coaches are between the age of 26 to 38.
Okay, nice. And when you systematize, you're talking like not just business practices, right? It's like the actual coaching, the training program, the training process and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So for specific tiers within our system, teams will do quarterly testing. We have force plates and a few other things. So we're taking that data and then we're basically creating a feedback loop within our system so that we can make sure that our processes are working.
Right. Nice. And then where did that develop? Was that like something you kind of came to, or you adopted from elsewhere, or?
Some of it is, so the dogmatic approach, and I think we all have it, is definitely from, former Soviets and Chinese coaches that I've worked with over the years. It's a lot of like, touch and feel. Does it feel right? Yeah, it smells right. Maybe this should work. In terms of like all the other things I just described, like in terms of testing and stuff like that, I'm part of a couple coach groups. One particularly is quite good, like the SoCal Academy with the coaches that are in that. Yeah. They've helped me out over, the course of the last couple of years, making some of those right decisions.
Nice.
Definitely.
And I feel like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for
it. One of the most important aspects of like running a gym is having that support system, either from like another community or a coach or something along those lines. Without that, like we're all on these vacuums or separate islands. Like we have no idea how to do this.
Yeah, coaches need coaches, and we need mentorship. If we're selling coaching, we should be receiving coaching.
For sure.
One of the things that I was really impressed with the business systems that you have, when we chatted previously, because a lot of coaches I talk to, gym owners I talk to, are not doing those things. Mm-hmm. It's very much all over the place. So you mentioned you have weekly, monthly, quarterly meetings. Take me through your meeting cadence for your team.
Yeah, so my team meets in person once a week. Actually, let me take a step back. We have 2 tiers of meetings. We have our senior coach meeting, which is once a week. So we have my 2 senior coaches, my office admin, and myself in that meeting. And then we also have our staff meeting, which is once a week, which is all of our part-time and full-time coaches. You know, it's a larger group. The senior coach meeting is more focused on the business and sort of like the things that are happening within it. So, and then our staff meeting is more informational. So it's like front page news, what's happening, where's our churn rate, where's our acquisition rate, what athletes are competing, all the things that are necessary in order to run a business like this. We run each meeting that we run for the senior coaches. We have a weekly, a quarterly, and a monthly. Said those in the wrong order, but I think everybody gets the point, right? So each of those meetings have different amount of like focal points. So within a weekly meeting, you're focused on like the things that are happening within that week. Monthly, it's only the top things that are happening in that month that are really going to move the needle. And quarterly is, you know, big number stuff. Like, am I going to hit this quarterly number? Is that number? And we have a couple like KPIs. We're just not concerned about like revenue coming in. We also focus on how many athletes are competing, how many athletes can go from, you know, basically net new, not even being in the sport, sign up for USA weightlifting, and then sign up for their first meet. My coaches are compensated as part of that process.
Interesting. I love that. I love it. Like, cause so KPIs for coaching, I do a lot of business coaching and mentorship, and I was meeting with a gym yesterday. They're in LA, and like, we were creating some coaching KPIs, and I was trying to explain that like, not every KPI is a sales conversion rate or it's not always tied to a number, but it could be national qualifying totals. It could be registrations for a competition. And so I love that you've done that, because it's like, I think my thing with KPIs is they just need to influence the behaviors that we're looking for. It sounds like you've done that.
So we wanted, at the end of the day, we're all here to coach, right? We want to make athletes better at what they do or what they want to do. And I want the coaches to ascend upwards as well. And the only way to really, the language that coaches understand, it's not, churn, revenue, what's my arm, what's my acquisition rate. It's really like, how can I develop these athletes? And if you can put that in front of them, they're definitely going to chase it. We've got a new coach we just hired at our South location. And when I say new, she's new to Austin Barbell coaching. She's coached previously, but like she's taken off with it. She is absolutely obsessed with making sure that her athletes are prepared for American Open 2 or VSO 2 or whatever they're calling it nowadays.
Nice. That's super cool. Yeah. I like that idea of like establishing KPIs that are, like you said, like drive the actual behavior, but like also this idea of like signing new people up is a metric you're actually concerned with, where basically like making more weightlifters, getting more weightlifters to compete, doing the sport, and actually like focusing on that as a central like sort of idea for a coach versus is everybody paying on time, and is like, are we getting more clients versus like actually doing the job that we're saying we're doing.
Right. And those things are all important, right? I'm not saying they're not, but I don't think my coaches necessarily want to focus on, those like nurturing leads and doing all the things that happen on the business side. We have another person in the house that basically focuses on those things.
Yep, absolutely. One of the things you talked about too was the different tracks you have for your athletes. So on ramp, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. How do you come up with a system like that? And how are you implementing that in your business today?
So the one thing that we took a look at is like, as new athletes come in, it's really hard to establish new habits, right? It's true with any, recreational sport or hobby or fitness regimen. So the first 30 days for us is crucial. We want athletes to adopt, the lifestyle of a weightlifter, or at least have, extended interest in it. So we onboard athletes in a 3-session on-ramp. There is an option to go into more one-on-one sessions. Those sessions are 1 hour. They basically focus on one's a clean, one's a snatch, one's back squat, and gym safety, which is really important. We found a lot of athletes coming in that never used a freestanding rack would tip it over. So we go over, how to commingle within a weightlifting facility. After they go through on-ramp on-ramp doesn't finish until they're past their 30-day mark. The 30-day mark is important for us because we allow athletes to basically opt out and not train with us within 30 days. So it's like it's sort of, it's that initial front end offer where you're talking to an
kind of like a
athlete and they're like,
guarantee.
Yeah.
it's basically like, hey, we're gonna work our ass off for you so that you can be successful and that you like what you're doing. And if you don't, you can leave. It's fine. No contract,
Awesome.
no nothing. So for us, the 30 days is like, that's where we're really focusing on, like making sure that athlete is developing that habit, showing up to training. You know, do they understand the programming? Does it work for them? Is it too intense? All the things that go into making just basically customer service.
That's incredible. Because like, so, you know, obviously we know in the sales and marketing standpoint that a guarantee is important. And it goes like, I'm sure you know who Alex Hermosi is and like talks about his guarantees, you know,
not
100 million
personally,
offers.
but
okay. Yeah. But still like, and so one of the things he talks about is some sort of, you know, money back guarantee if we have some sort of offer. And I've never heard of you've got 30 days to opt out or else, you know, then you continue on. So are you signing people up on 3, 6, 12-month agreements after that, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have a 6, a 12, and an 18-month contract. And the membership agreements, I mean, there's flexibility in them. You know, there's pause periods and things like that. But we find that our most popular option, you know, whatever you want to say is on the menu, is 18 months. Most athletes will come in and there's a price break, right? So the longer you commit to us, the longer, you know, the better price you're going to get. And most people opt into that 18-month option.
How are you? Oh, sorry, Max, go.
No, I was just going to ask real quick. Do you find that weightlifters, I mean, I don't know if you work with powerlifting as well, but do you find weightlifters are a way more long-term play? Like, I feel like I've known weightlifters. We did some research on one of the app we have, the B2C app we have, and I was blown away by the experience level of the majority of the users, like 5 to 7 years of lifting for a huge chunk of the users on our app. And it's kind of surprising to me with weightlifting how long people stay in it, where powerlifting, it's like you might have a powerlifting career that spans the life cycle of I've never touched a barbell to did my first meet, competed, did everything I could to qualify for Raw Nationals, went up 3 weight classes, went down a weight class, got injured, and I'm done. And that's 18 and a half months. And like that whole process is so quick with powerlifting. There are obviously people that stick around a long time, but weightlifting seems like it's just like people linger forever.
I think with weightlifting, what they typically do is a weightlifter will come in, let's say, you know, never touched a barbell before. Average lifespan is between 18 to 3 years. So I usually just say like a weightlifter is going to last a quad, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
After that, they're typically done competing. Like they've done it, they've succeeded, you know, they're disappointed, whatever it is that that they're interpreting from that. But they typically still train. You know, they still love the grind. They still love, you know, the programming. They're just not competitive anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I think with powerlifting, you know, obviously, so I have a gym. We have about, you know, 300 coach lifters, about 100 open gym, all that stuff. And so I've seen the churn and the change over the years. And I started the gym in 2017. And I mean, people, they get their first, you know, little injury or something, and all of a sudden they go do Pilates or yoga. Like it's just like their vehicle of fitness. Where with weightlifting, the barrier to entry is higher, and the grit that someone needs to succeed in the sport is so much higher. To add 1 kilo to a clean and jerk after they're trained, right after with some experience. So like for me, it's almost like maybe it's the type of person that's willing to put themselves through that abuse. Yeah, they're gonna stay longer. Powerlifters are just soft.
I think, and I have a little bit of exposure to powerlifting because we have a lot of powerlifting athletes that come in that convert to weightlifting. But what I found with most of those athletes coming in is they've all been self-trained. So, and I think that's the difference between like Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting is a lot of powerlifters can get into the sport, start moving at a rapid pace, and not have to, you know, employ a coach or anything else.
There's also like, I feel like with weightlifting, there's a degree of like, people don't make as much progress in weightlifting as they do in powerlifting. In powerlifting, you can start and add 100 plus kilos to your total. In weightlifting, you can get people that will add 30 kilos to their total over the entire lifespan of their lifting, right? So it's like people will continue to do it even if they're not making more progress, you know, like they love the act of doing it versus like, if they know they're not going to make a lot more clean and jerk progress. You know, they've gotten a PR, maybe that was a year ago, and they're kind of just still doing it. Maybe they touch on bigger weights, but they can kind of hold on for longer, and they love the act of doing it so much that they don't quit, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things, Rob, you mentioned that I think a lot of, again, the 3 listeners that listen to this, and every time I say that, we have Ryan. He's like, I forget which barbell club he is, but he always comments like one of your listeners checking in. So thank you, Ryan, if you're listening to this. Again, you talked about your 90-day experience and why it's critical for beginners and retention. Tell me about that. The first 90 days.
Let me just pick it up from 30 days, right? So our athletes will come in, they'll go through their on-ramp period, right? And then after on-ramp, we then progress them into like a beginner plan. So the coaches will go through the ideation of like, hey, you know, is this athlete ready to move forward with this program, depending if it's 3 or 4 days a week. And that's really the first tier or the first, you know, bucket that athletes are part of. And then they'll ascend upwards into, you know, an intermediate, more advanced, a national program and so forth. And then there's different teams that align with those programs. Could be the same coach in some situations, but in others, like we have a master's team that has a coach that's dedicated only for those athletes. So I guess just take a step back with like, why is 90 days important? I think it goes beyond 90 days. I think you have to sort of, as a coach, be upfront and with the athlete and like coaching, like, and I say coach your ass off most of the time. When we have a facility that's got, you know, 25 people in it and there's, you know, one coach on the floor, which does happen. I mean, that coach is busy. It's really difficult to focus and make sure that there's adequate, you know, time spent with each athlete.
Absolutely.
Do you find that, or I guess the first question is, you have like tracks. Is everyone doing the same program, or is it individualized, or how does that work?
So for instance, on the national track, all the athletes are more or less doing the same plan. There may be a reduction in volume. There may be, you know, maybe one athlete their peak is happening sooner based on their weight class or something along those lines. But they're, for the most part, doing very similar movements. And even across tracks, we try to keep the movements very similar so that we can have continuity and some sort of togetherness in the gym. You know, you've got the entire gym doing snatches, but you've got the beginners at the end doing snatch off blocks or, you know, something a little bit more basic. And then, you know, at the end, you've got athletes doing hang snatch or whatever. It's a way for us to have more experienced athletes and beginners in the same space and feel like they're, you know, working towards the same common goal, which is just hitting PRs and competing and having fun.
Nice.
That's one of the reasons, you know, I feel like weightlifting gyms have less churn than powerlifting gyms because like you have sense of sport and camaraderie. Whereas like in my gym, everyone's on their individualized plan, which can be great for progress, but like everyone's has headphones in, doing their thing in their own world. And there's people that love that, but I have people churn earlier than I would assume because they're like, ooh, like I'm not getting that like sense of community that I thought I would be getting. But it's hard because like one of our selling points is individualized programming. But I love that idea. I think with weightlifting, and I used to rent space from SoCal weightlifting and stuff, and I watched how they operated before I really took SoCal powerlifting to the next level. Like, and I tried to mimic that to an extent, but at the same time, I think the difference in sport, it's so hard to mimic with powerlifting because it's so different with the individualization of training.
Right.
Why, yeah, Max, why is that? Like, out of curiosity, why do you feel like powerlifting clients need more individualization or are looking for that versus like weightlifting clients? Like they're more okay with more template-based stuff.
I think it's a much simpler sport. You have one quality, right? So it's like level, I would say this, like in general, the level of programming knowledge in powerlifting 10 years ago, 15 years ago was way worse than weightlifting. And I would say it's about 10x where weightlifters are. Weightlifters have stagnated completely. Where powerlifting, I mean, the degree, the quality of coaching you can get in powerlifting today is insane. And like people are driven, there's more money in it. It's just a different kind of thing. And so it's like the evolution of that, because it's such a simple thing and the people that get into it are super into numbers and like super into it. They have just taken it to another level where you'll go and train somebody and like, if they don't make progress in the first cycle, they might quit and get a coach, and then you'll watch them and they'll get 10 kilos on their bench. And it's like, people are just way more competitive, way more driven. There's just so much more access to it. So in weightlifting, it's like, it's just the nature of individualization is lower. So everyone kind of can do the same stuff. With powerlifting, it's like, you can make more progress. And so if you're not getting exactly what you think you need, it would be like, why am I not doing this? Why am I doing the exact same thing that guy is when I know that he does 3 sets more than I do on squat this week? So I should be doing whatever. It's like, it's just more obvious, right? There's nothing else to compare. Where in weightlifting, 5 people could do the same program and all do okay on it because half of them are just, they're afraid of the weight. And so they get pushed harder and they do well. And it's like, it's just there's more quality. So it's like, there's more of a gray area to make progress in weightlifting than there is in powerlifting. It's just like, if you're not getting physically stronger, you won't do any better. Right. Where weightlifting, like your technique, your psychology, those things can be, tangibles that improve just from different aspects of coaching or environment.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So Rob, the marketing team at Coach Logic called me and they told me that you're using Team Builder to program right now for your gym. And so, they told me I'm going to get fired if I got to talk about it and convert you live. No, I'm just kidding.
That was me that called them.
Tell me about Team Builder, why you use it and what the limitations are, and your ideal scenario for a software that would help you coach.
Yeah, so we've been on Team Builder for quite some time. And the process, before I get into like why we chose it, the process is very much the same as all S&C or weightlifting coaches. They're going through a spreadsheet, they're crunching the numbers, they're making sure it's mathematically, correct based on what they're trying to accomplish in that cycle or annual plan. And then we take that and then we put it into Team Builder. So we're basically programming twice for every athlete to some, degree. Team Builder for us, the reason why we decided to go with them many years ago was really because it was one of the only platforms that focused on S&C. A lot of the other platforms are mainly like a messaging platform that allows you to attach a program to it. And I'm super objective. Maybe I got a little bit of the tism, but at the end of the day, it's like, I need numbers and I need data and I want to make decisions based on that. And that's what Team Builder allowed us to do. It's got pretty good over the years, but there's some gaps. If we didn't have those spreadsheets, we wouldn't be able to do annual planning and all the other things. I think for us, the ideal platform is something that, looks through the optics of a weightlifting coach. Right now, Coach Logic is the only one that I know of that's pursuing that. All the other platforms are, they're just opaque when it comes to weightlifting.
So you guys are writing your programs in, I'm assuming, just going to take a guess, a lot of your training is based on what we kind of, the brief discussion we had about you working with Oleg. Guessing a lot of your training is built around a lot of top-down volume calculations and distributions of training into different buckets and intensities. And you kind of have a model that's like a little bit bigger picture with the actual calculations. You're using that with spreadsheets to get the actual output of like sets and reps and exercises on the days, then taking those spreadsheets and uploading that into Team Builder.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
There's no capability to upload anything into Team Builder.
Okay, but you're just manually putting it in. But
yeah,
okay. And so like when you're making adjustments and stuff, you're doing it by volume, as in like, all right, I've got this guy, his weekly volume is 220 reps or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to distribute out however I want and whatever. You've got your calculations planned. Then you go ahead and like a coach kind of filters that in through their mind and builds out the actual program. Mm-hmm. Then that's kind of your setup. Do you have like these templates kind of built already where it's like, hey, here's 12 different mesocycles we've already designed that are these sort of ranges and we kind of piece it together? Or is it like every one of these is bespoke?
Like, because we have different tracks, right? So there are some tracks that get a new bespoke program, and we do program weekly because things change.
Sure.
But the annual planning is the annual planning. It's exactly what it sounds like. Competitions are laid out. We know the ebbs and flow of what the cycle should look like. And we have like a thematic overview, like quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 are going to focus on these qualities, plyometrics, speed training, whatever. So we repeat the question one more time, just so I make sure I hit it on that.
I'm just curious, like, do you have like a lot of this pre-built and you're just drawing on it? Or is it like, how much is actually written ahead of time?
I would say it's like a 70-30. Okay. 30% of it is like new week over week. There's always new exercises, new equipment coming into the gym, new ideas. And, you want to implement that. Coaching is, maybe 99%, science experiment, and the rest is based on facts. So anyways,
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm always curious because I'm curious how a lot of people do it. You obviously are super well organized. You've got a really good business structure and the integration of that. Because to me, that's like, It's either when you talk to coaches, you either in one of three camps, but really two. One camp is, hey, I calculate down to the, how many repetitions are we doing this week on this day in the snatch at this percentage? And the other group is like, you just go heavy, bro. Like, just keep it simple. You guys are overcomplicating. And there's an endless number of people on either side on the internet screaming one way or the other. Cause one, I don't want to spend any time programming and like, it worked for me. I didn't tell anybody about the steroids I did and that like, I actually don't make progress and blah, blah, blah. And the other side is like, no, man, like, what is the Rain Man scene where he spills the toothpicks and he's like, there's 875 toothpicks. And, like there's that guy and then there's the other guy. So I'm always curious because it is a big part. It's like, if you just disregard it and say programming is not important, I don't give a shit. I crapped out 5 templates 7 years ago and those work. And that seems like that part of your business is just totally easy. It's like, oh, we just program. But on the other side of it, how do you sell that like 2 people are doing things that just clearly aren't right for them? Like if your jerk is bad, why are you doing 5 cleans today instead of, some jerks?
Right.
The other side is like, hey, if that's just crushing your business because you're spending 6 days a week writing so much training and so much programming that you can't really do the other side of it. So how do you reconcile those? I'm always curious because I'm always just interested where people fall, because you've obviously done a ton. You're super successful. You got a big gym. You have a lot of people, and you're doing this complex programming on the side, which is impressive.
Yeah. So I think we're more on the number cruncher side. So we try to calculate everything in a spreadsheet, and we do our distributions based on, what we feel those qualities of those athletes in that tier or group should be. The one big difference that we've shifted in the last, year is we've bought some force plates, got a bunch of like OVR, BBT devices. So we're looking at all the athletes through the lens of like a force velocity profile. And we're trying to like focus on those qualities versus like the movement itself.
Interesting.
So, okay, yeah, they need help with the jerk, but why do they need help with the jerk? Well, perhaps they can't develop power, in the dip, or they need more eccentric work or whatever. So this is probably the difference between like our coaching and others, is that I think we're taking more of a, S&C approach versus just like, I was a weightlifter for 10 years and I'm just going to do this because I know it works. I don't feel like the weightlifters that I've met that have become coaches, unless they're extremely open to new ideas, they're typically just repeating what their coach and their coach's coach and their coach's coach did, years, prior. And I think, not that the human body's changed much, but technology has evolved. And we should take advantage of that. I want objective numbers so I can make objective decisions.
Do you find that people who come in, you're onboarding a new coach, and we know you have a huge coaching process and onboarding coaches. Do you find that something that you would shy away from if a coach came in and they're like, hey, I worked with Max for 6 years and he's got this TUM system and like, I love it. Do you find that it's hard to break that, or you would just avoid that person altogether? Like, I want to start someone fresh.
I would probably avoid that individual.
Nice.
Over the years, we've had Olympians and Pan Am champions and many different, personalities come through the gym asking for jobs. Not that they weren't good people. I just wasn't ready to adopt something that's completely different than what we're doing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I also find that sometimes, the most successful athletes do not make the best coaches, for sure. Especially, and you don't want, I've only successfully one time hired a coach who had their own coaching business before being one of my coaches, because they're less likely to adopt your culture, your brand, your system.
Yeah.
And then, then clients are confused. Why is this person over there using bands and chains versus this person over here doing some linear program? It hurts culture. So I totally understand that.
So there's a guy out there, I think his name's Stu. He's from Micro Gym University or something like that. But he talks about like a unique brand of fitness, UBF. And if your coaches aren't bought into your unique brand of whatever it is that you're selling, you don't want them on your staff.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to dive into was building a remote coaching, vertical in the business. I know you haven't really dove into that yet. Tell me a little bit about, why you haven't tried yet, or if you have, and what that looks like.
So the only period of time where we did remote coaching was during COVID. And it was really, nobody had a choice, right? And we do have some athletes that train with distance, but they're in the gym once a week. So I wouldn't consider them remote athletes. We're still cueing them skin to skin, and, they understand how we think because we work with them weekly. But the main reason why we decided not to do remote coaching, it just seemed I didn't want to become commodity. I don't want our service and our program to just be, a credit card and a token, and then, 6 weeks later they're gone. I want to have a more of a lasting impression on the athletes that we work with.
Definitely. And I know you are interested though in potentially pursuing it as an option.
Yeah, I am. As our business, our system, our programming, our coaching has matured, like I feel like we're at a point right now where we can maintain the quality in doing so. I think a lot of coaches that get into remote coaching, it seems very easy on the surface. It's like, I've got WhatsApp, I've got text message, send me a video, I'll review it. And I think that those are tools, but are those the right tools? And is that athlete really going to get like something that's going to have meaning and, produce a result at the end of the day?
I've had this experience. I mean, I started doing this years ago and Zack was right there with me. And like, it's like you said, like you can have remote coaching. That's one of many different things on the spectrum, all the way from, I mean, my developer on our Coach Logic, he was like doing weightlifting with a guy, and that guy would send a spreadsheet to him and then just like copy and paste it. And he'd be like, sometimes he'd like text him, "Hey, I don't think there's a workout this week." He'd be like, "Oh, just repeat last week." And then like nothing would happen. Right. And then like other people that have I don't want to name names, but like extremely well-known high level powerlifting coaches that you would be like, people would die to train with, paying a premium and getting spreadsheets and WhatsApp, and them being like, "Hey, my meet's in 3 weeks." And they're like, "Oh, that's inconvenient." And be like, "Well, you knew about this like 7 weeks ago or 6 months ago." Like, and they're like, "Oh, well, we'll just run it in. Like, like we won't peak." And like, where it's like, there's no way you're doing a good job with a disorganized group of 5-6 apps to get that done. And so it's like you said, it's like, if you want to do long-term planning, you want to do an actual like real coaching job, like you need a specialized tool, right? And that's obviously why we built what we built. But it's funny because you have this spectrum of like, remote coaching can be garbage. And in a lot of ways it is, but because people will charge $75, $100, $125. And it's like, to them with 7 clients, it's worth nothing because they're doing something else on the side or as a main gig. And so they just look at this as like passive income, which means like, I just churn through people until they leave. And then the other side is people that really put their heart and soul into it and they build their whole business around it. And it's like, I know people that have 100+ clients and they're crushing it and they deliver great product and their athletes do really well. It is one of those things that's like, if you treat it as a full-time job and you really put your heart and soul into it, you can do great things. But if you don't, it gets this sort of reputation as being a commodity. If you're the kind of person who's constantly telling people how many clients you have, you're probably not focused on the job enough, right?
Fair.
Yeah, you see it a lot.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has worked really well for us, and I coached remote even before I had the gym, but it's worked as a retention tool too. As people do move away, I retain them.
Yeah,
we're able to retain them on our remote program. They move, their price gets reduced, kind of just pretty much like what the gym membership, represents in the price, and they're able to stay and maintain that relationship. But I think the key is treating it just as important as the coaching that happens in person. And there's a learning curve for coaches too. Max and I have talked about this. Like, the best remote coaches were in-person coaches first. And so we see, obviously, the barrier to entry to being a remote coach is 0. You can just declare you're one now. And so for us, it's like, we only give remote clients to the coaches that have been on our roster for like over 2 years, because we know that they've had experience. They know how to cue. They know the job. They know what needs to be done and how to do it. But yeah, I mean, there's parts of the system potentially, right, with like some of the tools and equipment that you're using to program and give feedback to athletes. Like, yeah, the athlete may not have access to force plates at the other gym that they go to. So it's going to be probably having to recalibrate things a little bit so that they can still get that outstanding experience, even if it's not the same as the in-person coaching experience at Austin Barbell.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah. And I think like, it's interesting, like on the sales side too, I think there's a lot of room for opportunity, because one of the things that's worked well for us, like we run a lot of Google ads for online coaching and we rank pretty high SEO wise. Like if you look up online powerlifting coach, like our organic search results are pretty good. Our ads show up, and a lot of other coaching companies just aren't run by like real business owners, in my opinion. And so like, it's a matter of, to push you to the top, it's literally like, yeah, be a good coach and just like do some advertising because no one else is doing it. I feel like to the degree it should be done. And so I know you guys already paid stuff already, right? For the in-person stuff.
We do run paid ads. We do paid ads primarily for like intro to weightlifting and to bring new personalities into the gym that might have never done weightlifting in the past.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just also changing the client avatar. Because the other thing I've noticed is the remote clients are a different type of client avatar. So my ads that go out for remote coaching are looking for the competitor, the person that wants to increase their total for the next meet. The ads going out for in-person coaching is let's learn the fundamentals of the squat, bench, and deadlift, because it's just a different, the fundamental person is not going to hire the online coach typically, or they're not going to stay. Right. And so I try to make sure the client avatars are probably two different sets as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I was about to mention like the types of individuals that we've had for remote coaching in the past, and even our athletes that are, semi-remote, one day into the gym and the rest are remote. They're all serious competitors. I mean, some are even competing at a national level. So I would say that those are, probably the most serious of the serious.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, as we wrap up here, one of the questions I like to ask coaches is like, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who wants to start coaching or even wants to open a gym? And it doesn't have to be one piece, but like, what's your overall purview on this?
Yeah. So let's go to opening a gym. So, wow, there is just so much. Don't do it.
So that's like the number one piece of advice every gym owner gives to everyone else.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of gym owners that I've met over the years that they're either envious or they have, aspirations to open that second location. And I would definitely give them advice to not. Like, I wish we could take a step back at times. I love the fact that we have 2 gyms now, but it came with a lot of frustration, a lot of education, and trying to like hire the right people. And we had to hire coaches of mentors and to help us like run the business. It's expensive. And I think having 2 locations can be, an amazing experience, and you can broaden your athlete roster. But at the end of the day, it's like, it is a huge amount of stress. I find myself like, I'm doing plumbing just like most coaches are. I'm working on programming. I'm managing a staff. It can pull you pretty thin pretty quick. As advice for like getting into coaching, I think the most important thing to sort of adhere to, just as I described before about creating a system on paper, something that you can reference and go back to, you need to do that first. If you can't put your thoughts on a whiteboard or convey them in some way other than, slick conversation, then you're not a coach yet.
I like that.
Well, yeah. Rob, I really appreciate your time today, man. I think this is an awesome episode.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Good luck with it too. Be exciting to see.